Welcome to Going Deeper into Dev Marketing by Developer Market Pair, a show where we go beyond surface level, advise, and focus on actionable insights that DevTool founders and marketers can use to grow today. We'll do long interviews with top DevTool marketers, solo deep dives with yours truly, sprinkled with real life examples and teardowns. This will be fun. Oh, and yes, this was AI generated, but the rest of the show is very personal. Now, on to the show.
Hey, cool. Right. So, Itamar, I've been following you for a really long time. I think it's probably, I don't know, like a year and something, maybe, maybe year and a half. And I remember your breakdowns and things you shared in your newsletter, that you had some time ago. Then followed you on LinkedIn. I love a lot of the stuff that you're doing, and I think, I just want to, thank you for all the content that you put out here. But to people who don't know you, to all those fools, who should know you, you know, could you give a little bit of an intro into what do you do, what do you specialize in, what's your what gets you going?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so first of all, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be in your podcast. So I'm Itamar. I'm a growth consultant. I'm based in Tel Aviv, and a lot of my work is with B2D brands, with DevTools, or generally speaking, to companies that sell to technical personas. Whether it is IT directors, data leaders, engineers, data engineers, etc. And but really, what I'm really doing is that I combine a performance-oriented approach to paid ads, along with a very creative focused approach to paid ads. And by that I mean that, I'll tell you what a conversation that I just had. Okay, I just had a conversation with a prospect, and they were telling me, I asked them, like, okay, how the demand gen going? How do you pay the ads are doing? And I said, well, really well. I mean, we just managed to reduce the cost per MQL by quite a bit. And I asked them, okay, and the sales team, are they happy with those leads? So the prospect left and admitted that the sales team is not happy. And that's really the problem that I'm trying to solve, trying to generate signups or leads that the sales teams actually want to talk to, or that actually convert down the funnel rather than just add some fluff number of leads or MQLs. And so that's like the performance part of no fluff. Let's generate some real pipeline, real SQLs, depending if it's PLG or sales-led. And the way that I managed to do it is by leveraging very unique creatives. Like I said, I'm a growth consultant, and I think that the number one reason I lose sales, like the number one reasons companies consider working with me and then decide that they don't want to do it, is that they just feel that my creative approach is not serious enough for them.
So let's talk about that part, because I think that is a beautiful part that divides the room. So the creatives, at least the ones I saw that you share on LinkedIn, a lot of them they're sort of like a TikTok style video ads with maybe a VP of data or VP of engineering talking about their problems. But there's a person. There's definitely some talking about problems. Sometimes there's some UI shown, sometimes not, but it's definitely not overly produced. It doesn't look like $1 million video, that's for sure. It does, speak to the problem, often technically or always in a quirky, funny way, it seems, right? anything to add to that the sort of like style that you like doing?
So yes, it's exactly what he said. Okay, it's like a UGC or TikTok style ad. Okay, what I'm basically doing is I'm bringing B2C aesthetics into the world of B2B. But really, that's only part of the story. Okay, the reason I'm trying to bring this B2C aesthetics into B2B or B2D is so I will capture the user's attention, and so I'll be able to tell them a more complex story. Because
Agreed.
that's the biggest issue with creatives in B2B and B2D. Okay, the thing is that DevTools are complicated products. Okay, it's not always you can't explain often in 5 words what the product does, why it does it, why it's even important. It's sometimes it requires an explanation. You need someone to state what's the problem, to which to kind of companies is it relevant, and what the product actually does. And if you just and you need to say it in a manner that will still be engaging enough, so you will gain the attention of your audience. So that's really the point of those TikTok style ads. I bring in the TikTok vibe into LinkedIn ads usually. I will capture the attention long enough to give them a real sales pitch, not a 5 seconds overview, but to make sure that they will truly understand that by the time they finish watching the ad, the user has some kind of basic understanding of what is this product and what is it good for.
So
And with
maybe let's unpack it a little bit, because I think that's a very important distinction, a very important idea here. I think because many ads and many creatives that you see, right? What they do is like you have that 5 second attention grabber, let's say, right? That is supposed to get a click to the site that is supposed to explain, right? Which, I mean, that's the hope, and that's how many ads were created. And science works, science doesn't, I guess. But I think that with what you're saying is like, if we can bring that that story here to the platform that people are on, that's better. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you're doing it in a social platform, you need to grab that attention. And if you do it different enough than the rest of the things that are around it, then you have a chance to grab that attention. And then you keep that attention by actually explaining what the product does, what are the problems it solves, etc., etc., right? So maybe from before we go deeper into this, I think it's important to maybe talk, just for a minute about the sort of that distinction between the social ads, things that you run on Meta, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, versus Google ads that people may, or YouTube search ads or stuff like that, where people bucket all of the ads into one bucket of those are ads, where in reality I think they are completely different beasts, those things. So could you maybe talk a little bit about that, about those different sort of types of ads and different purposes of those ads that you like to try, specifically in the B2D you know area?
Yeah, so it's a good question. First of all, I think that the main distinction is between paid search and paid social. That's because Reddit ads, LinkedIn ads, and Facebook ads, each channel has its own uniqueness, but they act very similarly. The path to win in those channels is similar. In paid search, it's a completely different story. I'll say, first of all, that I think that paid search is a channel in decline. I think that the main reason is that sophisticated users these days do not use Google as much as they used to, and they actively avoid clicking on ads. Okay, so that's one reason that I see it as a channel in decline, especially for startups. That's because the second reason is that paid search is a game of money. Okay, so usually if you target a very large category, software category, okay, like observability, you have those giants that don't even count how much money they spend on Google Ads. Their entire goal is to have like a 100% impression share, and they're willing to spend whatever it takes because they have billions in the banks. And startups can't compete with that. Okay, you have absolutely no advantage as a startup in that kind of situation.
Just a
So
follow up here, because I think there's I agree with that, but with a caveat where unless you can cut out a subset, right? Like so let's say you have this observability, but let's say there is something where it's like I don't know, monolith observability in Elixir or whatever. Like let's say there's like a very there's a niche that you're tackling, and as a product, I mean, fighting big observability giant, hopefully you have that sort of focus, because otherwise you're baked anyway. But let's say you have that, and if you can bet for that smaller niche keyword, that's great. The problem is, like, likely there's not going to be enough volume and stuff like that, so it's going to be hard to actually do it. But if you could, if you can do that, then you have a chance. Would you agree with that, or like, not, you have maybe some? Mhm.
I agree completely. I just the most important thing when choosing a marketing channel is to make sure that it's scalable. Because, okay, you don't want a channel that's capable of generating a single lead every 2 weeks. That's simply not interesting. You want to make sure that it's a channel that can grow as your business grows. And if you're just focusing on niche keywords, it may give you like in those initial few leads, but it's simply not scalable. And so and I see it as a nice to have. Like, yeah, if there's like if 100 people a month are searching for your specific niche, then definitely you should be targeting that in Google Ads. But you haven't but that shouldn't be your go-to-market strategy. That shouldn't be your paid ads strategy.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think with that, is it scalable? It's important to add. Does it scale to your next sort of goal, or next level? Because, like, you're starting off, you have 0 users, let's say, right? Then getting 100 folks, 100 signups is big, right? If you have 1,000 or 10,000 every week or whatever that is, then like that 5 or 10 or whatnot that you're gonna get from a niche keyword is not gonna change anything,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you said we have paid search versus paid social, but paid search is not only Google, right? We also have not only Google search, right? We also have YouTube search and stuff like that.
Well, what do you mean by YouTube search? You mean in-feed
Well,
ads?
yeah, like I'm like actually searching, like I'm actually typing in something in there, and I get the in feed, in the search results in YouTube. I'm getting both the displays, and I can actually get the actual videos in there, right? So that gives a bit more of a, like, I think, um, at least from my perspective and from what I see, it's the, the dynamic is slightly different than in Google, where people do skip. I mean, at least they do seem to skip a lot of the ads more, I guess, than in YouTube, especially if those are other videos, that are actually relevant to the search, right? So, yeah.
So I think that we should this divide between, we should distinguish between display ads and in-feed video ads. First of all, display ads are, from my experience, a waste of money, especially on prospecting audiences. Okay, it may make sense for remarketing, but honestly, I'm not doing display ads for none of my clients. I rather focus on places where I can actually grab the user's attention. So that's about display ads. That one of the possible placements is indeed in the search results. The other kind of ad that you mentioned is a lot more interesting, in my opinion. It's in-feed ads. The thing is that it's an amazing, really, it's an amazing type of ad for a very, very specific kind of companies and very specific use cases. Because I'll say, there are two kinds of DevTools companies, okay, largely speaking. There are the kinds that that as an individual developer, you'd be interested in simply because you want to expand your horizons. You want to learn about a new technology, about a new kind of database, about the exciting new way to do stuff with Kubernetes, whatever. That's one type of company. And the other kind is the boring companies that you, as a developer, don't care about what they're doing until you actually need it. Okay, and so and
So
often
just to give examples, like I do like it. I think like a good example of a boring one is a lot of the APIs. You know, like you have a Geo API, or so like it's like there's no way you can create a super interesting content about, like, nobody cares about it unless they have a problem. Then they care for a week, you know, then or a month or whatever that is, for a few sprints. They solve the problem, and hopefully they never think about it. So somebody explained it as a sort of like, you know, in many, you know, many DevTools is sort of like a utility bill, you know, sort of like a, you know, electricity bill. Like you really don't want to think about it. You want to have it solved. You pay every month. It works. It gets electricity. You don't want to think about it ever, you know, and you never really thought about it. You know, you never really think about electricity. Like, why would you think about,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
exciting
I love that
electricity
analogy.
company?
Yeah, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you have a pain and you need to solve it, and so you're looking for the product that will solve this pain. And once you implemented it, all is good. You can move on to your next task, and that's it. Okay, but so that's the other kind of company. But if your business is actually interesting to the individual engineer, then what you can do is get influencers to create content around it. And once you have, and that's only step one, because again, like I said, the main thing, as I say it in a go-to-market strategy, is to make it scalable. And influencer marketing, even though it's a big niche in B2D, in DevTools, it's still not scalable, because even if that influencer has 100,000 subscribers, it's still going to be like, you'll post a video about your product, and then you'll get a few signups, and then that's it. Next week, nothing happens. But that's what you can use in-feed ads for. You can take this video the influencer created and distribute it with in-feed ads. But the thing is that it's very, very, very specific to very specific kind of companies. I say that for like 80% of DevTools companies, especially these days, where most DevTools companies kind of shifted focus from bottoms up to top down, I'd say that it's less relevant.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, like, it also has to be reasonable for someone to implement something in that influencer video during that, you know, 20-minute video, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, if it's a, you know, if it's something that by design is just going to be very complex, then it's going to be hard to show it this way. I mean, even possible. Maybe you can do, but yeah, but I think those things that can be quickly added to something, can be easily shown or very visible, have like nice UI, stuff like that. Those things could, yeah. Most importantly, can be quickly, added to a reasonable workflow. Yeah. Agreed.
Also, I
So,
think that it's part of it is if there's a free tier or an open source version or something like that, because influencers don't like products that are gated, that you have
yeah,
to go on a demo to call
yeah,
to
yeah,
start playing around with them.
yeah. No, I think it's like, when you think about it, it's, if you think through their lens, right? They're lending you their audience, and they're paying with their reputation. And so if it's a paid gated product, like that sort of like how much they sort of pay as a person is higher, right? If it's a free and open source, tier or product, it's just easier, right? You just get, you could make, do that video yourself. You could have, somebody came, and you created it, but it could have been just sort of organic, right? But yeah, like I think, so you mentioned like those bigger influencers. I think there's this part, and I'm actually super bullish on influencer marketing in devs, in DevTools generally. I mean, for wherever you can, right? But I think this is going to be more and more important as the search change, like this sort of like the search changes, the dynamic of searching for answers in Google changes, right? And so I think it's going to be more important to get to the right influencers and have some sort of like a strategy for more smaller influencers, right? Because like it's one thing to get 100,000 influencer, the other one is to get, 10, 2,000, follower influencers, and the logistics of those deals is similar. A lot of work, to get all of that, aligned, etc. But yeah, but it gets you to, to a certain audience. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
it gets you to a certain audience, but also it gets you to a certain skill level. Because the thing is that
good point.
the common, let's say that you're a staff engineer, okay? You're most likely not watching
Yeah,
YouTube videos in order to expand to educate yourself. You're
yeah,
watching other stuff. You may watch a recording from conferences, but you will not watch the common tutorial. And so if your go-to-market strategy is to enter from the bottom, like from the individual engineer, like Copilot, okay, for example, then it's a great strategy. But if you want to reach decision makers or senior individual contributors, then you need to find other ways to reach them.
yeah. I think there's like a few things here to unpack. I think that's a good point generally, but I'd add to this. So one thing is like sort of like an open, question, and open, sort of idea that I keep thinking about and keep coming back to is basically, somebody estimated that it's like, I think 70% of engineers, they don't go to conferences, don't go on Twitter, not on Reddit. They seem to be nowhere. 70% of devs, right? They're nowhere, right? I mean, because like they're at work, they work, then they search something, they talk to friends at work, right? But they're not really, like some people are super excited about their work and they're really excited about getting better all the time, etc. For some folks, it's work, and they just work, right? So there's this concept of, those folks are, Swix, I think, put it somewhere like a dark matter engineers. I studied physics, so like there's this, like there's this concept, like there's a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of mass that you don't see in the universe, right? And so with the devs as well. But then, if that's true that they go to work, they work, then actually, interestingly enough, it should be a reasonable strategy to get to the junior devs so that they talk to the senior devs at their work. and I have some anecdotals of that working, where those junior devs, they brought, there's a discussion about tooling, so that, there's typically a discussion, someone who's like more junior but super excited about the space, they typically know more tools, right? So they will bring something up, and at least, they tested something out. I know some companies, they specifically have those projects for like evaluation, where they get interns to help sort of like with the initial stages of the evaluation of tools, right? And then and so what I'm trying to say is, like, potentially getting those juniors to bring it to the seniors, right? Like, you bring the exciting tools to juniors, is not that bad. Because I often see this, people talk about the influencer channel being being basically capped at exactly what you said. Like, those, the people you actually want to get to, they don't watch it, right? They will not watch a tutorial of something, fairly basic. Most like, I mean, maybe some folks, but like most likely they won't, right? But it's still maybe, valuable strategy to go to, to go to the juniors so that they go to the seniors, right? If that's the estimation, that makes sense. Obviously you have outbound, and those senior folks, they often more involved in hiring, so they may be more, inclined to do some stuff on LinkedIn, or maybe share some of their stuff, or whatever it is, to just like, so it's easier to hire. I mean, especially if they switch to like managerial stuff. I mean, staff engineers is tricky, but like the managers is easier, because like they they want to hire. Typically, they hire folks. I don't know. Like, I think it's an interesting, sort of concept of like 70% of devs, like, where do they hang out? Nowhere. It's like
Well,
at work.
they probably hang out on Instagram, and
Yeah.
they
In their
watch
free time.
fitness videos or cat videos or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that when working with DevTools companies, Instagram is the best network.
Interesting. That's
And
interesting. Let's unpack it. I haven't heard that ever yet. So I love this, and I haven't. We experimented with with Meta and stuff through like Meta Match, those things where you get an audience from from LinkedIn, and then you match it, and then you can find those folks there. But Instagram, let's talk about that. I think that's interesting. So ads on Instagram. How do you're talking about targeting as well through like Meta Match with LinkedIn? What sort of creatives are you thinking about? Let's talk about Instagram.
all right. So first of all, the thing is that we need to separate, we need to distinguish between DevTools companies and data companies. And the reason is that there are simply so much more engineers, software engineers, than there are data professionals. And that's very significant
Can you
because,
maybe give examples of those, just so it's like obvious what are we talking about when it comes to this distinction?
yeah, if your ICP is senior data scientist, what you probably want to do is to target them on LinkedIn. Okay? Among other reasons is that the data community is active on LinkedIn. But on the other end, if what you want to achieve is target staff engineers in enterprise companies, then actually LinkedIn is not a good place to do so, because they usually simply don't hang out on LinkedIn. There isn't a lot of relevant content there for them. But because there are so many of them, there are a lot of engineers. So B2D is sometimes like B2C. Because you have so many of them, you can reach them on B2C channels, and such as Meta. But of course, for that to work, you need two things. First of all, you need great creatives. Actually, that's the most important thing. Because the way B2C channels work is that they rely on signs they get from the audience and how they engage with your ads in order to figure out which audience is right for you. So you need to make sure that you don't just try to get clicks.
Yeah,
Because
I think
then
that's super important. The thing you mentioned to folks who because they may not be as familiar with this. So if I get it, and from my perspective, what you're talking about is basically, let's say we run an ad on Facebook, we have no targeting available, so we run an ad that basically starts with something like, I don't know, if you're a senior data scientist, right? And then it talks about data science. And then if somebody engaged with like 25, 50% of that ad, then we treat them as somebody interested in this, and then we can target with actual ads. So we basically use the first ad as a filter. I mean, it's simplifying many things, but it's a filter to get the audience you want so that you serve more ads to them later. Is that what you meant, or am I
similar, it's
Mhm.
because it's not a different ad. It's not two stages. Like I said, I use a long form relatively ads, like 1 minute long, that discuss the product in depth. So the ads themselves should be qualifying. Like someone who is not an engineer shouldn't watch them after 5 seconds because he would be lost. And that's the way to reach engineers on B2C channels. Uh, Another thing is that B2C channels, specifically Meta and Google, I mean YouTube in that case, they have very good algorithms. The algorithms that if you provide it with enough meaningful signals, they manage to narrow down targeting and to find out who is the relevant audience, to find engineers for you, even if the native targeting options do not allow it. But again, that's where I come back to the creative part, because once you have great creatives, it gives those the algorithm enough meaningful signals. You can then, for example, something that I like to do is that I like to start with some kind of interest-based audience, something that's like natively provided by Meta. And then after I gather like a few thousand views, I'll create a lookalike audience based on the people who watched 75% of the video. Because if someone watched 75% of the video, technical video about a software product, that means he's an engineer. And so I want people like that. So that's like the way to qualify and define your audience for the advertising platforms.
To add to this, and then I want to go back and deeper. But like recently on Lenny's, I think there's this ads guy who basically said that with many of those channels, Meta specifically, he he starts with like looking for a 1%, so like the highest lookalike for the customers that they already have, right? So like that's sort of just to check the channel. He's basically thinking about like figuring out whether there are signals of life on a particular platform for them, right? So if basically the 1% lookalike, so like a very high lookalike to the customers they already have, they don't really engage. They wouldn't really engage with the ads. There's no signal of engagement, no signal of this actually being a good channel, and it's a good signal that perhaps this is not the channel, right? But so I haven't done it. I've heard about this for the first time, sort of like thinking about it this way, where but it does make sense. I mean, if you do have established ICP and you know that this is because like it could be that you're not touching a pocket of the market that is actually there, but it's different. It's different, and it will be, there will be great customers there, but they're just completely different from the ones you already have. So that's the assumption. But that was more of a growth stage sort of yeah, tip, I guess.
I think it's, well, actually, it sounds to me like a tactic more suitable for B2C brands, because at least the issue I mostly encounter when I try to leverage a customer list from for lookalike audiences in Meta is, well, actually, it's a double problem. First of all, business emails. If you collect business emails, then you can't match them on Meta because people sign up with their personal emails. That's one problem. Another problem is that match rates in Meta are not what they used to be. Privacy regulations, people more conscious of the data, etc. All of this leads to the fact that you need a lot more users to get an audience that you can actually work with, which is why I try to work mainly with events that are generated in the platform itself, because then the ad platform has all the data. What do I mean by that? If you're using a pixel to send back to meta ads a conversion, there's a chance that they will be able to find that users in the system, and there's a good chance, even most chances are that they won't. But on the other hand, they do know exactly who watched 75% of the video and who watched 97% of the video because it's their data. So if you manage to leverage platform-based data to create audiences, the chances of success are much higher.
Also, I think it's very, like when you think about it, sort of longer term, right? And like going into more of a cookie-less world and more into privacy. Like this is gonna happen. Like it's gonna happen sooner or later. Like we're going in that direction. People want to be more anonymous. It's not just Europe. I'm in Europe, so yeah. But like it's like I think it's hard for me to imagine that it's going to change the direction. So it's going to go more in that direction, I presume, of more private. And then it feels more sort of fair, I guess, and real, and especially with the audience like devs, right? Where, like if you're interested in a particular thing, then you're going to get more of those things. If you're interested and we're searching, we're doing some, like it feels less invasive. Maybe that first one, the very first ad or something like that, it grabs the attention, but it's not, so it wasn't targeted in a way because there was no or little signal that you're going to be interested in this. But then you're not going to get, bombarded with ads that are completely irrelevant. And so I think it's like, and I didn't need to know sort of shady things, right? To serve those ads to you, because you engaged with this content. So, you're probably interested. So you may actually find it valuable because, and I think it's like, so I really like this. I really like this direction. I think folks from Sentry, they went in that direction, like completely dropping like the third-party cookies, and going in the direction of actually, I think dropping first-party cookies as well. I don't know, like that they called for like navigating the website or something, or like really trying to go away, into the cookieless world, and so they had to rely when they do run lots of ads on YouTube, and so like they have to rely on you being interested in certain types of content and then engaging with their content, and then you get more of those ads. So I think that's a good direction. I really like it. I really like that.
Also, something to take into account is that developers actively try to make sure you won't be able to track them. Seriously, if you're targeting senior developers, I would be suspicious of any senior developers that doesn't have an ad blocker. I don't know a single senior developer that doesn't have at least one ad blocker on his browser. I know many senior developers that use multiple ad blockers because they found out that one catches things the other doesn't. Okay,
Yeah.
so developers make it intentionally hard for you to track it, to track their behavior. I'll say even more, okay? Listen, really, developers are the worst audience. Really, terrible target audience. Why is that? First of all, like I said, they don't want to be targeted, they don't want to be tracked, and they have the technical knowledge to make sure we want to be able to track them. Second is that they evaluate your product often in silence. That's a major difference, by the way, between data professionals and engineering professionals. Because data professionals, data leaders, often behave like regular executives. In the fact that, in the sense that when they evaluate a product, they want to go on a call and want to have someone, some contact to talk to, and they'll want to plan a POC and etc. On the other end, engineers would want to just try it out themselves, work with your documentation. If they really encounter an issue, talk to your support, and they will only agree to open a call with you when they are settled that that's what they need. So you get so little signals along the way that someone is even evaluating your product.
Yeah, unless like you do retargeting and they are on your content and you see that they were reading it and stuff like that, but then again you have ad blockers, so you're not going to catch everything. Like yeah, I think like we're in the data space that as you defined it, right? Like we're in the side of MLOps, tooling for. Now we actually refocused more on research side, so that's even funnier side, or like sort of AI researcher side. But anyway, yes, I think it's like it depends in the data space, because we did see a lot of that sort of anonymous evaluation, and then somebody gets on a demo call and they've already been testing it or looking at it and comparing it for past month, and that it's not that they come to just like find out what it does. They have questions, and so I think it like depends, but I get what you're saying. I think that the more you go into the devy, like proper dev direction, then the more it is true. Which is like, I mean, yeah, like it just changes like what do you do? Like you have to, like, this is the reality, right? And then ads, like there's this concept that devs hate ads, and I mean, I think everyone hates bad ads, and everyone is like hates interruption. It's like it's sort of true for everyone. That said, like if you have a problem, you have a particular problem, and you happen to see an ad that actually talks about the problem you have. I mean, even if you dislike that this is an ad, right? But it hits, the problem you have. You're like, yeah, cool. Like it doesn't matter as much, Like I at least from from my perspective and from what I see. But
Also, I'd like to add to that
oh
that
yeah, mm-hmm.
it's a funny thing, because it's this axiom in the B2D space that, oh no, dev hates ads. And it's true, but also regular people who are not devs, they also don't like ads.
Yeah.
Okay. And my first marketing job, my first user acquisition job was in Monday.com. Okay? They have like a project management software.
Yeah.
And YouTube ads was one of our most successful channels ever in terms of.
Everyone saw those ads. I saw them, everywhere.
Yes, I'm sure. And it was, on the one hand, super successful in terms of ROI, generated probably tens of millions of dollars in revenue. On the other hand, we never stopped getting complaints about the fact that we are spamming people and that they can't see our ads anymore. So yeah, people complain, and still Monday.com is worth billions. So thanks partly to those ads.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fact that people hate ads doesn't mean that they don't work.
Yeah, no. I think it's like, and then there is another thing of like, like of self-reported hatred and self-report, like you're saying, like you don't know the any senior dev that doesn't have ad blockers, etc. I remember this. I think it was David, one of the founders of Ethical Ads, and they ran a study. I think like looking for trying to sort of like estimate it, right? And I think it was completely reversed to what you would expect from reading a Hacker News thread. If you read a Hacker News thread, you'd expect everyone and their dog to have 15 ad blockers and everything on an, I don't know, airtight laptop, just so you don't say, like, like that's what you'd expect reading this. This is like, there's like self-reported, everyone hates all the ads, like, and then you see, but you seeing those comments, it makes anyone who wanted to say something like meaningful that, hey, they actually found the product from the ads and they enjoyed, like nobody's going to say anything if you see the the very aggressive comment. That's one thing, but then you actually see the behavior, and I mean, people engage with those ads. What are you talking, like, we have customers are coming who found out from an ad, or that ad was a part of of their journey. I think they estimated that actually with the ad blockers, like, I want to say that only 30 or 40% of people have ad blockers, of devs have ad
Really?
blockers. Yeah, like, even though it would seem it's like 90 or whatever, like, like, it's not, I can find that study, maybe add it as a link in the show notes, and but I think it's like sometimes people talk about something and how they hate certain things, and then and that those things obviously don't work and blah blah blah. But then, I mean, even if you have, let's say you have like a super invade, like let's say you do Monday.com for a for a boring dev, like there's a boring API, right, as we talked about, like a geo API or whatever that is, and let's say we just spam Twitter with those ads, like they're everywhere. We spent like, they're everywhere, right? And and you say like, and maybe you ask people, and everyone says that they hate those geo API ads, but then there comes the evaluation of geo API, for your product, and you're like, wow, maybe we should check. Like, I hate that, I mean, those other products, they don't seem to fit the spec that we have, like what do we want, right? So maybe we should check it out, or like you check it out of, hey, I mean, I'm just gonna check it out so that I know that that's a horrible product, and you find like it's actually a good product. So I think it's like, one thing is like what you
That's the way to
report.
make it to the list. Like that's how
Yeah,
you make.
and so coming back to this, because I think this is like a really important part, because there are obviously many parts to ads. Like there is, targeting. There is like what sort of goals you want, like how you want to focus, how do you want to optimize those ads. Like, do you use those algorithms? You set up everything yourself. But then there's creative, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from reading you, what are you talking about? It's and thinking about it, creative seems to be almost like a deal breaker for many of those programs, many of those campaigns. Like the creative is actually, it shouldn't be an afterthought. It almost is like the core of it. And I'm wondering how you think about those creatives, and if you could talk about some of the bad things you see in DevTool ads creatives, and good things, things that you'd want to share here.
Yeah. So I want to be a positive person, but I'm unable to think of a lot of good things to say about ads I see in the DevTools space. And honestly, more generally speaking, in the B2B space. Okay, that's why I don't even bother seeing what most B2B companies are doing. I'm more interested in seeing what B2C companies are doing, what B2C2B companies are doing, what's trending on TikTok, what's going on Instagram. That's what, as a marketer, that's what I'm interested in, because yeah, B2B creatives usually are very, very boring and they don't perform very well. So, but I think that if I have to choose like the one thing that I hate most in B2B ads, it would be in B2D ads, it would be like ship faster. You know, like
Oh
you
yeah,
have like
ship
a
faster.
generic headline, ship faster, and this almost
Yeah.
abstract image below it, and that's
Hmm.
somehow supposed to convince
Somebody
users.
shaking hands.
Yeah,
Yeah, those are good. I mean, it also like it transfers to the headlines of the website as well. Oftentimes, like, I don't know, like at some point I was like doing sort of research into value propositions, right? And I don't know how many companies I saw, because I was looking over time as well, right? That had build better software faster in some flavor of like build better. It just, I mean, come on, like yes, of course, like every productivity tool is going to be about that. Like, but would like, yeah. No, I agree.
It's like increased revenue in B2B. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Every martech tool out there is supposed to increase revenue. Okay, that's what we're here for, to
Yeah.
increase revenue. But that's not what ads should do.
So that's why. Listen, like I think I don't know if they have it still, but like there was I think Dave Gerhardt shared someone on the podcast, but like there was this HubSpot versus Salesforce, and HubSpot had I think grow revenue faster, and the other one had grow revenue better at the same. So I mean, it's like it's for you to decide. Like, do you want to do faster or better? Like, it's that's a
Well, it's
differentiator.
a choice. You have to, it's a meaningful one.
100%. Okay. So you're saying that, yeah, like ship faster, build better software faster, stuff like that. This is your sort of pet peeve. You don't like that. So what do you like about the B2C ads that you're trying to transfer to B2D and B2B?
So honestly, what I take from B2C is mainly the aesthetics and not the content.
Mm-hmm.
The content, let me tell it another way. My first job, like I said earlier, was in user acquisition, was in Monday.com. And it's a company that spends millions of dollars a month on ads, and there was a lot of lessons learned. And one of Monday.com best practices was that every ad should show the product. And I think that's something that I learned in Monday.com and that I take with me even today when the products that I advertise are so different from Monday.com. And often you can show the product in B2D because sometimes the product is, like you said, it's an API, it's a piece of code. Okay, it's something that integrates to your database. You can't show a screenshot of it, but you should. So if you can't show it, you should still explain it, and that's what the focus of the content should be. The focus shouldn't be on like benefits or even not on the features, but on what this product does and what problem does it solve. So, and the problem is that it can often be boring, like to explain this. I'm thinking of those 5 minutes long explainer videos that enterprises like to have on their landing page. That's terrible. That's boring. No one watches it. So what I like to do is to take the content, like to the gist of it, like what the product actually does, why it's a good product, and I combine the B2C aesthetic to make people actually want to watch it.
Mm-hmm. So example of that would be, there's a person, like we take that aesthetic, there's a person explaining something, right? And then taking the part of the product that is hard to show, you can show parts of or pieces of the website while you explain, or you can show, some diagrams, maybe around the architecture or whatnot, or an example of, the different approach to solving a data problem. I remember one of the ads you shared on LinkedIn was around that. I think about database speed ups and stuff like that. Mm.
So yeah, exactly. So in that case, it was an ad for Epsilon, which is
Mm-hmm.
a tool in the DB space, and really what we showed there is actually parts in the documentation that explain what the product does and how it works behind the scenes. So we actually showed the diagrams that explain the functionality. We can't show the product. It doesn't have a nice dashboard like Monday.com because it's a DB tool. But so you need to be creative in how you can still explain in a visually appealing way what the product does. That's the challenge.
Mm-hmm. So let's double click on this, on sort of on that process for creating that creative. Because obviously I see people in those actors, I presume, right? Or in those ads that you share. I wonder how you do that. Like what's your process for setting for creating those things? Like how do you think about it? I don't know, the script. Is it you, or do you get external help for creating those sort of scripts and thinking about how do you approach that?
Well, so actually, it's a quite structured process by now. It all starts with a kickoff call, right?
Hmm.
Because I need to understand the product in depth, usually with a product marketer or with a product manager.
Hmm.
And after this call, I start ideating. Yes, I start to think about like creative concepts that might work in the sense that they might give us the chance to explain what I learned in this kickoff call about what's interesting in the product. At this point, I come up with a few optional creative concepts. I send it to the client, and then we start exchanging ideas. They often have very helpful feedback because they know the customer best. And once we agree on a creative concept, I go on to write the script. Now, what I learned along the way is that the script writing process is extremely important. You can't, and the script shouldn't be only about the words that the actor says, but it should give very detailed instructions on how they should say it, what the body language should communicate, what they should communicate non-verbally, what settings should it take place in, what words should they emphasize, because UGC is very very common in B2C, because if what you and why is and it's simple in B2C, because if you're selling, I don't know, a fitness app. Okay, everyone can use a fitness app. You can just send it to the creator, and he'll use it. He'll understand what's cool about it, and they'll create an ad. That doesn't work with DevTools because we're working with actors. They don't know what is Postgres. Okay, they have absolutely no idea what's the meaning of the words that they pronounce. So, I always like when I write a sequel, you have to say them, pronounce it sequel, sequel, not letter by letter. So you have to really direct the script doesn't need to only uh, say what words the actor should say, but it should be it should act as a director that
Hmm.
replaces the understanding of the product. And so that's the heavy lifting, really. That's the part where the most heavy lifting is done, like writing the script and then finding a good actor. I'll say that the one challenge I commonly encounter in finding good actors is that is finding people that look like engineers. Yeah, because that's really a rare thing to find, an actor that is a good actor that looks like an engineer. So I have a few of those, and I keep, and for my DevTools clients, I keep returning to them because they're so realistic.
Hmm.
And and then once we have the script ready and we agreed on the actor, so that's the point where I send it out for production. I have the actor shoot himself, and then I have a regular editor that I work with to do the final touches.
Hmm. So, how, okay, so you find those let's say somebody wanted to do that, sort of they wanted to do stuff like that themselves. Then you find where would you find those the actors? Like, is it sort of like Upwork or something like that, or like freelancers, stuff like that? Like, you find voice actors as well, or is that how you do that?
Yeah, Fiverr and
Sort of.
Upwork. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. So the process is basically we go to the team, we have the kickoff meeting, we figure out with the product marketing, or maybe founders, hopefully both, potentially both, like do they, what's interesting about a product. Then you ideate, then you come back with with ideas for creative directions. Then we get feedback back. We work on a script. That's a big an important part of it, where you need to go over everything from how to say things to what we want to show to everything in there, right? And then we find actors, we shoot it, we clean it up, and here we go. And then those go in. I presume LinkedIn, but then you said Instagram is a big thing, so I presume Instagram as well. Or that probably
Yeah,
depends on the particular customer.
exactly. It depends. Like if it's a data company, my go-to channel would be LinkedIn. If it's
Mm-hmm.
a DevTools company, my go-to channel would be Meta or
Mm-hmm.
Google, like YouTube. So it
Mm-hmm.
really depends.
Cool. So let's talk about that for a minute. Like you start working with someone, right? You start working with a with a DevTools startup, and I wonder what's your process, what's your baseline sort of approach to how you start testing, how you start working with companies to figure out where to go, what to do. Like obviously first we want to start running some tests and see what sticks, and then scale those things. I wonder how you approach it. What's your what's your process here?
Okay, I think that the first step is that I try to evaluate if they should run ads,
Hmm.
because I think that too many founders just approach that strategy too early in their journey,
Mm-hmm.
and they simply shouldn't run ads so early. So I ask, do you have customers? Do you have? How did you get them? Because if you don't have any customers, or if all the customers you have are from personal relationships, and so that's not a good sign. That doesn't, because the thing is that paid ads work, but they do not work by adding to sales, but they work by multiplying
I
sales.
like that. I like that. Mm-hmm.
If you already have some traction, paid ads will do wonders for you by amplifying that traction. But if you don't have any traction, paid ads will not work for you, period. And so that's why the first step is to even figure out, should we be doing ads? And often I speak to founders in early stage dev startups, and I tell them, listen, first launch in Hacker News, okay? See if you get some feedback. Try to do some outbound, okay? Really, like outbound should be the first step for every startup, because if you manage to do outbound even partially well, you will be able to do inbound, and it's so much less expensive to fail in outbound than it is to fail in inbound. So that's the first step, whether we should even do ads. And then the second step would be to understand the go-to-market strategy, because paid ads are a
Oh,
part
maybe
of
just to stop. Like with the you mentioned the outbound. I think it could be like a pure outbound, but I also think it could be like this. It is outbound, but being in the communities is sometimes how people do outbound, especially bottom out outbound, where you're in those communities, people have questions, people have problems, and you chip in with your your solution. You try to get those folks to talk, to get feedback on what you build, etc. And you actually create sort of, it is outbound, but it's sort of like a flavor of outbound, if you will, that you speak to the devs, you try to figure out that this is actually working for people who seem to have this exact problem, right? So if they say this is crap, then, and they absolutely don't have that problem, then, back to the drawing board, before you build that SEO engine, or whatever it is, and then, and then start crying, a few months later. So, yeah, so I think that's an important thing.
Well, I think that what you're saying is very true for proper DevTools, because DevTools really have a very active communities. And then your testing ground can be in the community space.
Yep.
But if you check out other technical personas, then often they don't have these kind of communities. Okay, data leaders, for example. If you want to sell to directors of data in Fortune 500 companies, then it's not very likely that you'll find them on Reddit. Okay, you'll find them on LinkedIn, and so you can't really, and often they won't participate in professional discussions, and so you just need to reach out to them and do classical outbound in this case. The same goes for IT. So software engineers will, where there's a strong community, that's a great approach, but it's not always feasible.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, it comes back to, like, where do people are and what they do, right? And do you understand that persona, right? So, but let's say that's the case. Like, you do have some traction, and you wanna you're thinking about ads, and so let's get to that stage. So we're past that first stage where we figure out whether we should even be thinking about ads.
Yeah. So the second stage is really to understand, actually it's exactly what you just said, where those people are. Because again, if we're talking about, and again, I'm talking about paid social, okay? Because paid search is a completely different thing. And like I said, I think it's a channel in decline. But so if, honestly, by now I have I know, because I work with similar personas, I kind of know where to find them. But the question that you should ask yourself is if your persona actually engages in a specific channel. Are they active on LinkedIn? Are they active on Instagram? Are they active on TikTok? And and by the way, if they're not active on LinkedIn and they are active on Instagram, you should also ask yourself if you have enough, if your TAM is big enough, if your total addressable market is big enough. Why? Because B2C channels will only work if you have audience in the hundred thousands. Like that's the case for developers, because there are so many of them. You can get B2C channels to work. But if you only have like 50,000 people who are your target audience, then most likely you need to work with LinkedIn ads.
Can you say, because you mentioned something, and I wonder if I understand, is the understand if people are active somewhere. What do you mean? Because let's say on Reddit, I'm fairly active, but I'm a lurker. I don't really contribute that much on Reddit, but I do read a ton on Reddit, right? So would you consider me active or not? What do you mean with active? Do you talk engagement, or how do you think about that? What's important from your perspective?
Well, specifically in Reddit, even if you're a lurker, it means that you have something to learn. Even if you just read, that means there are discussions that are professionally relevant to you. So honestly, sometimes it's a very simple question of how many communities you can target. Like if there's two relevant communities with 5,000 people in each of them, then that's probably not the channel for you. In LinkedIn, by the way, it's a bit more complicated, because what I see usually when I try to target developers in LinkedIn, and I mean specifically senior individual contributors, is that they have a profile on LinkedIn And so you can create an audience that will seem like it's large enough, but in fact, because they don't spend a lot of time in the platform, you will have a very hard time delivering ads to that audience. Which is not to say it's impossible. I've seen success, but it doesn't mean that you can't take the numbers the ad platform shows you at face value, but you need to actively measure what's your reach, how many unique users are you actually reaching, and make changes accordingly.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good point. Especially on LinkedIn, where many devs, I have friends who are like, they activate when they're looking for their next gig. Like that's only, and then they're active, and then they're dead for on LinkedIn for the next year or whatever, and then they come back when they start searching.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Which
yeah,
is exactly, by the way, the point that you don't want to find them, because they're between jobs. You can't sell to them at that very moment. So
yeah.
especially if you're doing lead gen, I always exclude in lead generation campaigns. I always exclude job seekers from my target audience for that exact reason.
Although there's like in the in signal based outbound, that is a big thing right now in signal based sales. One of the big signals, and it is like, if the company is changing the stack, hiring new developers, or somebody's like hire, like let's say there's a new VP of data, that's an amazing spot to start talking with those folks. So like typically you come in and you want to make changes, right? And so it's a great spot for a dev tool company, to talk to them. But yeah, I think it's, yeah, like I think it's like after you found it,
Yeah,
or I mean,
exactly.
you could start early, but I don't know if people do, because like, yeah, like I'm looking for a job. I'm not going to be testing tools now,
Yeah, exactly.
so yeah, for sure. Okay, now you so you talked about this creative. I wondered two things. Like one thing is um is the ad, that's sort of like the ad, the TikTok style, let's say, call it, ad, the entire campaign? Or how do you think about the entire campaign? Or like, are there other ads, other creatives, like let's say, like trust builders later? So like first I need, to see that you're engaged, but when you are engaged, maybe I'm going to start showing you testimonial ads or something like that, like, to build trust, or stuff around the product, stuff about, I don't know, being Forrester, I don't know, quadrant something, just like the trust builders, ROIs, cases, stuff like that. How do you think about sort of the entire campaign? Because I do see the ads that you mentioned on your LinkedIn as definitely something that is, it's a good cold layer thing, right? Like the, to to start the discussion, but potentially it's not the, not the entire campaign. So that's one part. And the second part that I'm interested in is the measurement. So, but we can go to that, after. Maybe let's start with the, the how do you think about this entire, as an entire campaign?
All right. So first of all, I'm not a big believer in the layers approach.
Hmm.
Okay? I usually have one remarketing campaign with 5 to 10% of the budget allocated,
Mm-hmm.
and 95% of the budget is allocated to prospecting campaigns, and that's it. And I usually show the
Can you
same
can you
ads.
explain what those mean, just to, in simple terms? So like, one, you have the prospecting campaigns and the, um,
Yeah.
you mentioned.
So prospecting, I mean cold audience that
Mm-hmm.
haven't visited your website, that haven't interacted with your ads before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the key audience that you want to target.
Mm-hmm.
Some people invest a lot in remarketing, and I think it's a mistake, because that's not where growth comes from. To grow your brand, you need to get eyeballs, fresh eyeballs, people who don't know you, on your product. There's no other way. It's more difficult than just capturing conversions from remarketing campaigns, but that's the only way to actually generate new revenue.
That
And so,
retargeting part, because I just, to touch on this, and what you said earlier, I think it's like, like retargeting is just a conversion pusher, right? So if you have a conversion from, I don't know, the blog to the product side of a certain percentage, and you run retargeting ads, then likely you'll see higher conversions of a conversion that is already happening, right? And we've run tests to prove with, and it was like an interesting stuff to see where people don't click ads, but then you see the conversions move between groups that see them and don't see them. But I think it's like, to your point, it's like this is like pushing the conversions, but you push the conversions on people that, on the eyeballs that you have, on folks who are actually there. So if that doesn't, like, if that's small, then it's not going to move the needle at all. So so I think it's like an important part there. Yeah, sorry.
So, and why do I mention this? Because so in the prospecting campaigns, I'll never use those kind of assets you mentioned, like testimonials, simply because, by the way, testimonials is a funny thing. It should work seemingly because, hey, if I'm a CTO, what more would I want than hearing another CTO tells about his experience? But the fact is that it doesn't work. And the reason is that CTOs and CDOs and engineering managers and even marketing managers are not professional actors. They're not. They don't follow a script, and so they don't manage to concisely capture the value of the product, and they don't capture the attention of the user. Which is why what I like to do is to take testimonials, to take case studies, but have professional actors act them out. This is how X company did this, and this. And then you still have the advantage of referring to a famous company that's using the product, which is really a trust builder, but you still manage to do it in an enticing way that captures the user's attention. But back to your original question, I will use traditional assets, trust building assets such as testimonials in the remarketing campaign. But again, that's only like 5% of the budget. Most of it will be spent on enticing, attention-grabbing ads that supposed to educate the user on what this product even does.
Yeah, I understand. And there's this guy I follow as well, Justin Rowe, right? On LinkedIn ads. He advocates that, sort of strategy of like you have that cold layer to get people in there, right? And whether that is, like if you don't have any other sources of traffic, then it's your only source of cold traffic, right? Those ads, and then you go for the trust builders, and basically build the trust over a longer period of time, right? And then those trust building campaigns, they have a good ROI. Otherwise, they would not. Like if you ran them, in that first layer, then it wouldn't work at all.
Well, the thing is that many marketing teams are not actually trying to generate revenue as much as they are trying to generate trackable touch points that will associate the revenue that was created or that was about to be created with their campaigns. And remarketing, even if that's what you're after, remarketing campaigns are a great way to find people that are already in the process of buying, get them to click on that link to your website with this UTM, and bam, you have a marketing attributed conversion in your pipeline.
Fair. Yeah, in the extreme example, I think there's that extreme example that there are companies that do it, but it's a funny sort of anecdote where kids got flyers, right? And they had to distribute flyers, like give flyers to people, and whoever came with a flyer to the store, they would get a dollar, right? And the kids would run around the city and give the flyers, and there was this one kid who just stood at the door of the store and would just like give people flyers at the door. So I think like in the extreme example, this is what's happening. I mean, that's why Google search is basically like a Google paid search, right? Like it's such a big budget, budget line in many marketing budgets, because like the entire flow is basically somebody found out somewhere, maybe in the community, maybe they saw an ad, saw some content, read some blogs, talked with people, whatever it was. Then they search Google and click on the first thing, and Google gets the credit for it. Yeah, like it is an attributable touch point, but it's not an incremental impact, and I think it's a good segue to that, sort of thinking about measurements and yeah, then if not that, if not touch points, right? Then how do you like to measure those campaigns? How do you like to think about the impact and actually knowing that what you're doing makes sense, right? Like, for example, how do you arrive at the conclusion that, hey, it should be like 5 or 10% and not 50-50 with like retargeting versus cold or stuff like that?
Okay, so honestly, it's not the decision not to spend more than 10% on remarketing is not a decision I often revisit. Okay, maybe only in cases where it's a very big company. Like, okay, for example, let's say that I will work with Datadog. Okay, then I'm sure that they have such a huge remarketing audience that it makes sense to spend even most of the budget on it. But if we're talking about early stage startups, seed stage, A round, B round, even C round, there's no reason to spend more than 10% of your budget on remarketing because you simply don't have large enough remarketing audience. Not enough relevant people visited your website or interacted with your LinkedIn page or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of how to measure it, so really measurement is a very, very difficult thing. But as a rule of thumb, I say that it becomes, the smaller the startup is, the easier it becomes. Because really, ultimately, when the business does well, nobody cares about attribution. People care about attribution when the business doesn't do well. And if you have a stream of high intent leads coming in every week, then no one really cares if they have a UTM that says source equals LinkedIn or not. Yep. So that's really, I think, the most important thing is to say that the business improves overall, which is why for many of my clients, I start the weekly report by an overview of how many relevant leads did we generate last week, and without regard to attribution. And only after that, I do a drill down of what we did in every channel, how each campaign performed, because I know that attribution is not going to tell us the entire story. So I want to see incremental change. I want to see that we are doing better than we used to, especially if we increased the budget. If we doubled the budget,
I think that's the part that is the trickiest, I think, because like on the front of the, like if it's going well, if it's like a program we should continue, right? Like 100% with, like if it's working, and especially early stage, if it's working. Like if you don't know that it's working, it's not working.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you should know, like it should be clear as day. Like it should be, like you started running a campaign and then all of a sudden leads are coming. Before, no leads. What don't you understand? Like sorry, but like it's clear, right? Like that's the beauty of early stage. I think that's a beauty, because like later it's harder. But like I think later you have the like even later, like you like if things are going well, like nobody asks, but sort of you should ask, right? Because like you want to understand, should you like ask for 2x the budget, 5x the budget, 10x the budget? Like you as a as a marketer, as a as a consultant, as a like you kind of want to know, like you kind of want to scale those things and figure out if they're working, and then it gets murkier. And now it seems, and sort of I wanted to ask you, like if you use those things, or like in a simplified version, this marketing mix modeling stuff where you basically correlate the what you said, like you look at the important metric, like actual KPI, like pipeline or qualified opportunities, or MQLs, if you're on that train. You look at that, and then you look at the impressions in those different channels, right, on those different campaigns, and then you correlate those things. You run simple models just to see which parts contributed, what's the baseline without what would be the baseline without anything, and then what those things contributed to this. So I wonder if what do you think about this sort of approach, because it's gaining a lot of traction, I think, like Paramark and Recast, I think, being two big companies talking about this. And I, as a data scientist, because before marketing, I was a data scientist. I don't know if you know, but I was actually that senior data scientist you talked about with no ad blockers. So that was me. No, but I guess I always loved ads. I just enjoy watching them, and enjoy hating them, enjoy watching them. Seeing the good ones once in a while, and anyway. But yeah, I like that those models are happening, because it is actually a good approach to looking for incrementality, which at the end of the day is what matters, not the attribution, which matters to the boss or boss of your boss or CFO, which, I mean, most of the time it's very, very unhelpful, to doing good marketing, at least from what I see. So I wonder how do you think about this incrementality? How do you think about, scaling those campaigns? Let's say something is working, you want to grow it. How do you approach that?
Yeah. So first of all, in terms of models, I work with startups like seed stage to round C or round D. And those kind of companies don't have enough data for an MMM model to be of any use. I think those can be useful for enterprises, but not for startups. So for startups, I'm doing very simple incrementality experiments, which come down to basically I always want to make sure that I'm making radical experiments. I will never say, hey, let's raise the budget by 20%. Okay, I will, but if we want to raise the budget, we want to double it, we want to triple it, because then I can just look at the data and immediately see, okay, at date X, we doubled the budget. What happened at date X plus 1, X plus 2? Because if I double the budget, I need to see a visible impact that I don't need any model in order to analyze. It should be right there in front of you. Here we doubled the budget, and here we
I
have
love that.
40% more leads.
I love that. I think it's like, so just, yeah. And for founders to sort of think about it, it's like, if you grew by 10, like let's say you have 100 leads coming in a month, right? And that's, at your ACV, it's not a lot. Let's say that it isn't. Then growing it by 5% doesn't change anything for you. So don't test it, because the time is very costly, and every experiment, like if you you cannot really run 5 experiments at the same time, or 20, right? Because like then everything gets diluted. So it's better to run one big one and see the big impact, or see no impact and understand that it's not the direction, and then follow up or do another one or something like that. So like it's important, and I think it's like in growth you see that as well, right? Like you have those onboarding, like tweaks that you may want to do, and oftentimes when you actually look at the data and you actually want to do a proper A/B testing with the power of the test, and understand like how much data would you need to detect a 2% change, you see that, hey, I mean, we're not going to wait for a year to detect a 2% change on this. Like, it doesn't matter. It's stupid, Let's think about a test that changes it by 50%. So I really like what you're saying, is like the earlier stage you are, like the bigger those tests should be. Like you should be running big tests, testing new channels, new approaches, maybe scaling, like 2x, 3, like what, and then it will be clear. It will be clear that it worked or it didn't. So I really like that. And I think sometimes it's easy to go into this optimization mode where it doesn't matter. Like the small improvements, they do matter for big companies. They don't matter for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. I think that's
now there are small improvements to be made, but those I usually make based on in-platform metrics. If I'm looking at small optimizations, then I rely on in-platform metrics. For example, video completion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't. So let's say that I have two videos and I want to understand which one performs better. I won't try to attribute any conversion to a specific video. Okay, that's useless. Mostly because probably the users watched both videos on different occasions. What I'm interested is in how many people watch the video to its completion. How many people engage with it? How many likes does it get? How many comments? Also, qualitatively, are the comments relevant? Okay, that's something that in DevTools is especially significant because developers can be annoying and they like to make annoying comments. And those comments are very valuable to understand if you hit the mark or not, if you managed to get your point across or not. So, like, I'm all for trolls. Like, troll me. Like, write annoying comments because those are data points that I can use to understand if things are working or not.
Yeah. I mean, also, it's like, at least you're, like the worst thing that could happen is indifference. It's not people love it, people hate it. That's great. Like if it's indifference, that's the worst. That's the worst.
Yeah.
But I really like what you said, and just to reiterate this, and because I think it goes to pretty much everything in marketing. It's like you have the lagging metrics that really matter, and there's only a few that could, like, it's you either go all the way to revenue. I think that's too far, but depends on the company. Could make sense. You go for pipeline, so opportunities, qualified opportunities times the expected dollars of it. You can go for MQL sometimes if you think that this, you're certain enough that this converts. I actually like pipeline the most, or like opportunities the most, or qualified signups, things like that, depending on the motion. But something that is important that happens later. And then with a lot of the marketing activities, you have the leading metrics for in program, in platform, in channel, and you optimize the engagement, you optimize your activities based on those in-platform metrics, right? Because like if you were to figure out, like the watch time, or like optimize, like I know it's very important to optimize like the first 3 seconds of a video, like so that does it actually capture, like does it actually, like you and your product is a database that you buy for 2 years, right? Like what are you talking about, like looking end to end? You cannot look end to end. Like you have to optimize in
Yeah.
platform, and your bet, I mean, it's your bet basically, is that the more people watch it, then it will convert. I mean, over time you can go back and see it, and sounded like the more mature companies, that's what they do, right? You go back and see if that keeps correlating, if that if it like you back test it, if you will, like over time you see if that cohort on new ads or new approaches, like does it actually convert to the same revenue. Maybe there's a difference in ICP that actually converts, or like the tickets are bigger, or whatever it is. But like, I think like the general, takeaway from this is like, like the only metric that actually matters is something like later, right? That could take a long time, like the demo book, demo sat, whatever it is, but it's something that your sales team will not say this is a bullshit metric. It's my sort of like approach to this. Like a sales team says this is a good metric, okay, then then that's good. And then you have a lot of the things that help you operate, right? Like in platform, and those platforms, they have fantastic metrics for operating in platform, and then you hopefully have a way to sort of correlate those things. But
I think that generally speaking, there's too much emphasis in B2B marketing about measuring our activities, and it comes at the expense of actually doing great marketing.
mm-hmm.
And I think that marketers should just accept the fact that much of what we're doing, much of the effect that we are generating cannot be measured accurately or at all. And that's why, honestly, like my roots are in performance marketing, But as time goes by, I think of myself more in terms of traditional advertising firms. I try to create incredible ads, and then I want to make sure that our ICP watches them. And really, that's it. Because honestly, that's in 90% of the cases, that's all you can do. You can create great ads and you can distribute them to your ICP, and you should cross your fingers that the pipeline dashboard looks good.
Correlates, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I'm with you. I think like that's beautiful word. I think I saw this tweet, I think, or LinkedIn post from Rand Fishkin some time ago, where he basically said something along the lines of, "Well, it's known in marketing that 50% of your budget gets wasted. You just don't know which one." But the extension to that sort of known token is, but it shouldn't make you spend 100% of your budget on bad marketing.
yeah,
Like, and that's sort of what happens, right? Where like it's clearly not like, let's say you're wasting 50% of your budget, right? But you get 10 times more ROI from that 50% that doesn't get wasted. Or you spend 100% of your budget on something that gets like I don't know, 1x ROI or 2x ROI. Like it's not gonna, it's not in understand, like it's if it brings you results, like you should. And if you know from qualitative, from your 10 years in marketing, from you understanding your persona, from qualitative, that it's better to allocate those resources to, I don't know, having our founders spend time in a particular Discord, because like we know this is where people are, and at the same time you're like, okay, but we can't really attribute it, so better spend all that budget on Google search ads.
yeah,
Like it's, come on, like it's not, it shouldn't be that way. And and with founders, I think it's like less often that way, because like founders feel it. Founders, like have that. I mean, at the end of the day, they will be holding the bag, so they care, and they make those tougher decisions. But sometimes for marketers, it's hard, because like then somebody over your head is telling you to attribute, and so that's harder. But I think it's like, yeah, it's a great point with like with ads, and thinking about like, yeah, let's just create great ads. Because I think let's say, because when you flip this argument, it's also interesting, because like let's say you are actually thinking, and you're actually waiting for that KPI metric to fully load, right? Let's say you're actually waiting with every tweak for 6 months. Let's say we live in a crazy world, right? And we actually do that, right? We actually do that. What would you be doing? So you have that information, right? We live in the world where we have that information. What do? You fix the ads. You make them more like create better engagement, get better hooks, get more people to start watching, get more people to keep watching, get more people to understand the message. Like those are the things you'd be testing, right? So okay, maybe you don't understand that it doesn't, or it does impact that long-term KPI, right? That quickly. But when you look at your actions, right? Your actions would be more informed even by the in-platform metrics than that metric anyway. And
yeah.
you would be tweaking the ad to make it, a more engaging ad. Because what else? Like what else? Like if you look at to your point, like you look at B2C and you have all the data there in B2C compared to B2B. Like there's, like and those sales cycles are shorter, et cetera, et cetera. And what do people do? They optimize the engagement. They optimize the, memorability. They add the, they do those things that, improve the recall, like making it funny, making it completely different, making it, different. Like, I mean, this is what they do in it, and when they have all the data, and the sales cycle is 1 day. So what do you think is going to happen here? Like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe there is this part of like, yeah, it's more of a system, system two thinking, and more of a sort of, it's a buying committee. So you have to convince someone who's not using it. Fair point. And I agree with that. And I think there's like, examples and people sharing stuff where actually running those, let's say this trust adds to to every director, in a bigger company, so that when it gets to their table, right, that new tool analysis gets, like, they actually heard about it. So it's like easier for them to like not block something, and okay, it is a slightly different dynamic, but I think in many ways, it's, it's it's almost impossible for an ad that says, build better software faster, and it's a flat image ad with a CTA, read more, or buy, whatever that is, to be better than, than a video that is engaging, that explains what the product does and sort of gives you a gist before in platform, before you end up going to Google and searching for the product, or directly going to the, product site. Okay, doesn't get attributed, but it gives you the results, right? So
Yeah, a lot. It's often about common sense. Like often we get like so trapped in attribution and measurement and metrics that we forget about common sense. And really, it's sometimes about like taking a look at our campaign. Is it a good campaign? Does it deliver the message we want? Is it delivered to the people that we want it to be delivered to? That's
yeah.
it. No, yeah, I agree. Overall, like, it's CMOs have very short tenures. But I think that the thing is this: when a CMO is fired, no one cares about attribution. No CMO was ever fired because they couldn't attribute their conversions. Many CMOs are fired because they don't generate enough revenue. So really, I think that at the end of the day, demand generation should be about finding that vendor or that in-house professional that you trust, that understands the product and gives them the creative freedom to do what works best for your brand, even if it's not entirely measurable.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. There's that false sense of I guess safety in attribution, where, as you say, at the end of the day, like, if you don't produce, sooner or later it will come back to you and nobody's gonna care.
Yeah.
So agreed. Cool. All right, we're almost at the time for this today. I want to know if there's anything that you want to, talk about that we didn't, something you want to leave the listeners with, some thoughts around, ads and DevTool marketing that we haven't talked about that you want to share.
No, actually, I don't think we did. I think we had a very interesting conversation and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Itamar. So yeah, where should people find you if they want to know more about your work, know more about your thoughts on ads?
So I'm mainly active on LinkedIn. So just search for Itamar Ben Yair on LinkedIn and you'll find me.
Super. Yeah, Itamar's content, as I mentioned, is awesome. I keep watching those ads and keep loving them. I think we're gonna try some of them in in our case as well. Cool. Thanks a lot. All right, let me hit the stop
Thank you.
button. That was really cool.
That's a wrap for this episode of Going Deeper into Dev Marketing by developer Mark Appert. If you like the show and would like to support, follow the show and drop us a review. It means a ton and helps other DevTool founders and marketers find us. For more dev marketing resources, check out markappert.dev, where you'll find tens of guides and hundreds of examples. For more visual version of this pod, go to our YouTube channel at dev_Mark Appert. See you next time.